Welcome to Future Forward, a podcast where we share AI insights, one expert at a time. I'll be talking to experts from various backgrounds, ranging from academia to startups, scale-ups, and corporates. Welcome.
Hi there. I'm here with Stijn Christiaens, CDO and co-founder of Collibra. And I'm Davio, CEO and co-founder of Radix. And today we'll talk a bit more about AI and the future and how it will unravel. Hi Stijn, how are you?
Hello, good to be here. Doing all right? And hope you as well. I heard there were some issues with the coffee and the table earlier.
I can't put my coffee on the table.
Neither can I.
And that's hard. It's very hard. Problems in life. But let's not talk about the coffee. Let's talk about AI and the future. But before going to the future, who are you? What are you doing today? Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Of course, and first of all, thanks for having me over. Happy to be here. It's been a while since I was in Ghent, and it's a fun city to visit. So I'm Stijn, one of the co-founders of Collibra. That's now 15 years ago, so we've been doing this for quite some time. And over those years, I've had a variety of roles at the company. But for the last couple of years, I'm what we call our chief data citizen. Now, nobody knows what that means, but essentially, the chief data officer is the closest concept. So those are the responsibilities that I carry at Collibra, and it means that I'm responsible, for example, for our data strategy, data products, but also our data infrastructure. In doing all of that, using our own products and practices and sharing those experiences with our customers.
Yeah. So today I've heard you're working already a bit with AI as well. But before going to today, what's your background in AI?
So originally, I'm actually an electronical engineer. But I don't know if you know anything about that, right? But you have to actually put little resistors on circuitry. And the little resistors get their resistance by color coding. And I'm colorblind, so it was always messing stuff up. But it was also the only way to, at that time, study software engineering for me. So I became a software engineer, which is what I wanted to do, really. Partially because of computer games and all the smarts you already saw back then. And then after that software engineering work, I did an extra course of a master's, after master's in AI and artificial intelligence in Leuven. And that was a very broad AI course. So they would teach you about the philosophy of AI, what makes a good AI or a bad AI. They would teach you about neural networks and computer vision and all of that stuff, very broad. And then after that, I went into a software company. And then I went back to the university to work in a lab there, and actually a database lab. So I came back into the AI world a little bit through the angle of databases and semantics. All of a sudden, 2007, 2008, we're starting Collibra. So then, we got to build a software company now. And obviously AI is important. You want to put it in certain features. But there's 99 other things you got to deal with while you're building a software company.
Now, you've had a bit of a journey in AI then. Have you seen a difference between, let's say, the first time you got exposed to it and today? How have you seen that evolve?
Well, I think it's a massive difference on a number of levels. I mean, back in the day that I was studying this, there was $1 million prize for beating the game Go. So it's almost like a Japanese version of chess, but with a lot more options, so a lot more things to compute. But that's been beaten. I think that was 2016 or something like that. And then it went even crazier because you start to see real-time strategy games like StarCraft. I don't know if you played that, but I've played StarCraft and I always want to play it again. And you see these top players in StarCraft that are really good and they can do so many clicks per second, it's ridiculous. I mean, are they even human? But even they cannot beat the most advanced AIs who've played millions of games against themselves to make themselves as good as it can get. So obviously a lot of leaps have been made. And I think part of that is due to literally hardware. I mean, when you had to run a neural network back then, you didn't have the GPUs. We played Doom on a very low quality GPU, right? So it's a world of difference in the amount of compute you have at your personal or your company's expense. So that's a big difference. I also think there's a big difference in the amount of data that's available. So we can store a lot more data, we can transmit a lot more data. I mean, we didn't used to have fat internet back then, right? Even dial-up, downloading a picture or a movie was a big problem.
I still remember that.
Yeah, exactly,
like
those
a fax
noises.
machine. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot more data available because you can store it and you can transmit it, and you can also process it. And I think for a lot of the generative AI we see today, the availability of that data on the web was a prerequisite. Without that data, they could not have made those models.
So we're a bit at an, let's say, inflection point where all those things come together. But you hear, one side, I would say it's a spectrum, but one side saying not much changed between what we were doing then. We just have, like you say, more compute. Others say it has changed all. Where are you?
Well, ultimately the outcome is that it has changed, I would say. I mean, things are a lot more available mainstream than they are 15 or 20 years ago. That's very clear. But at the same time, it's also true that maybe the underlying architecture of some of those AIs are still, quote unquote, a neural network, right? So maybe some of that is still the same as well. But the outcomes are definitely very different from back then. And I do think that we'll need another leap. Like what we're seeing today it feels like a leapfrog in technology, right? Now, I think to leapfrog again, we'll probably need to revisit the AI architectures over time as well.
So the data, the compute were there, that wave is going, but now we need to rethink the mathematical side almost then.
If you want to leapfrog again, we'll need to do that again, yes.
So today you're a chief data citizen.
That's right, chief data citizen.
Chief data citizen officer at Collibra. What's your work doing with AI today? Do you work on AI as well?
Of course, at the company we do have a lot of stuff going on AI, and I do want to correct you on the citizen officer there a little bit. So remember, chief data officer is what most
chief
people
data
know
citizen.
The name us. We say chief data citizen because we do believe that every single individual in an organization uses data to do their work. So it's not just about the bosses, it's really about everyone using data. And ultimately AI as well. What do we do today? So in the data office, remember what I said earlier, data products are important. And I think they're important for every company today. And an example of a data product is, it could be like a BI dashboard, which is like 80 or 90% of what's out there, right? But it could also be an AI model. The things we've done as an AI model are very normal, I would say, for many organizations. For example, we've done a churn prediction model. So you look at all the data of all of your customers, the users, and you look at, okay, who stays as a user and who leaves, right? And then you classify that as churn. And then you try to predict where should we focus our resources, be that, features in the product or a time of a customer success person to make sure that we have the least amount of churn. And then you can do also propensity to buy and a whole bunch of other types of models. So very classical AI prediction models in business, if you may. And then what else have we done? So a colleague of ours started to play around with the whole ChatGPT thing, as you can imagine. This is very popular these days. And that's not the only one. People associate ChatGPT a little bit with AI these days, but there's a lot of other models out there, like image generation, stable diffusion, audio generation, a whole bunch of other ones. But we noticed, we could actually use that for automation in our software product as well. For example, generating definitions, improving search.
Definitions for data... in data catalog or how
That's right. Right. So if you have, let's say you're a data scientist or an analyst, and you're looking at a data set, and you only have the headers and the data, then you typically are missing a lot of context. Like, what does this column actually mean? Or what are allowed values? And a lot of time people have to manually key those in, right? Because somebody forgot to document them 20 years ago. But you can take an educated guess with those LLMs to say, oh, this is maybe this definition. You do have to check it, because it can spit out hallucinations easily. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, where we're already leveraging and will continue to leverage it at the company.
Nice. So, and that's what you're doing today, but how do you were talking about ChatGPT, LLMs, what's your perspective on what's happening today? How do you see that moving forward?
so I don't mean to I don't mean to sound like I have a crystal ball, right? Just to be very clear. But my 2 cents on what's happening today is I think we're seeing a lot of creative destruction. AI in a way used to be the realm of experts. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, right? But you'd need to have a PhD in physics and know either Python or R, right? And fight with each other about which one is best. You'd need to have that real world experience on operating on big data sets, using complicated infrastructure. I mean, it's only 6 years ago where we were all running Hadoop clusters, right? So you needed all that mastery, and then you needed the experience of having run that in a project to failure oftentimes, but also to success. So it's like a unique combination of skills that would make somebody really good at AI, right? And then on top of that, the organization would also have to know how to value that individual. What's happening now is that the power of AI is almost taken out of these experts' hands and given to anyone. So maybe all you can operate is Word, let's say, you can use AI, right? So all of a sudden, from experts to individuals, which means now everybody and their dog is playing around with it for all sorts of use cases. And they don't scrutinize maybe whether, the answer they get back out of this chatbot is accurate or not. But they just think it's amazing that something really looks like a human being on the other side of the wall that seems to have access to the whole internet, like in the snap of a finger.
That's a bit what we notice as well. The ChatGPT, it really put AI mainstream. It really opened up the doors for everyone to work with AI. Now, what we also see is that the expectations are very big, and they expect to have ChatGPT on their own stuff, on everything working from day one. And you were saying you don't need PhDs anymore. I'd like to challenge that a little bit in the sense that I agree with there's a big part of the things you can do with AI which becomes more accessible, but at the same time, we notice that there's a lot to do to really make value out of it. There's a difference between you have a sandbox and you have a playground and you have a chatbot where you can do some blah-de-blah, but really turning it into something which creates value, that's not that easy. How do you agree? How do you look at that?
No, I actually fully agree. So it's there's a challenge or a complexity in turning that widgety into something valuable, but there's also a challenge to taking that widget and taking it into something that you trust and rely on in production mission critical systems, right? So the value for the individual, if they're in their Word document or their Photoshop or whatever it is that they're in, and they have a new feature which makes their task easier, well, then the value to them as an individual is clear. They can now do things they cannot do before, and they can be more efficient in their works, right? So that value part is relatively clear, but how it translates to, okay, how do I now take this widget and apply it to a whole department or a whole part of my company or a new part of my business that I'm trying to figure out? That's again a business complexity where you need to understand, okay, how do I translate the widget into value? Fully agree there. On the side of how do I make it trustworthy and reliable and mission critical, that also takes expertise, because somebody's still going to have to set up a lot of infrastructure. Yeah, you may now have an API of some smart bot on the internet, but you're still going to have to call that API, right? You're still going to have to feed it with data. Those pipelines cannot break, but you're also going to have to put some control systems in place around the output of that API that you're calling. Because what if the output is that you're getting back is just false information, and you don't have any protection around it? Are you now going to send, let's say, automated marketing emails that are full of, I don't know, racist or sexist content because it was auto-generated by a bot? Are you going to throw up your hands and say, it doesn't work like that, right? So you do still need expertise in place to get the most out of it. But for a lot of people right now, they're not thinking at that point. They're thinking, I'm just playing around with this and this is fantastic. And they're making all sorts of new cool tools and cool new use cases. That's the creative destruction I was talking about, right? So a lot of flurry of new stuff happening, and we'll see that settle down in the next couple of quarters into, okay, this is how we really use this stuff in practice.
So how should we deal with that? Are you saying that we should put it as a copilot, or should we put it not directly in the hands of people, or do it automated?
I think you should put it in the hands of people, if only for the sake of experimentation alone and to get to know this a little bit. But the co-pilot phrase is a good one, actually. I like to think of them as little interns. Now, you've probably managed interns before, so you know that you can give them some tasks, you cannot give them other tasks. And the tasks that you've given them, it's like a 50-50 whether something is going to come out that's useful or not. You are going to have to coach them a lot. So the same thing is true for whatever smart thing you have, AI. You gotta give them an input, and then they're gonna come back with something, and then you gotta sort of coach them into the right direction.
Yep. So you have to be on top of your own game as well, then, to see if it's good or not, what the output is.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you have no way of verifying what you are getting back is actually correct. I like to think of AI not as artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence. They're just a tool for us. Right?
Exactly. How do you envision AI transforming businesses on a global scale in the coming years?
So creative destruction ongoing, which means nobody really knows how it will settle. But my view on it is that it is providing a lot of efficiency gains for a lot of knowledge workers. Now, obviously, a lot of people in companies today are knowledge workers, right? So them becoming more efficient will make the organization hopefully more efficient as a whole. And then you'll have organizations that use it and organizations that struggle to use it. And the ones that use it will, be more efficient and have an advance over their competitors who don't use it. So I think you'll see that distinction for sure.
Will we have a new Kodak?
Oh yeah, those happen all the time. Companies come and go all the time. So yes, we will have a new Codex, a new Blockbusters, and new what have you. They even said Google was on the chopping block now that AI came out, but they're still around also. So we'll see who makes it through. But I think also bad actors are going to use this a lot. They always use tools and technologies at their disposal. So you see a lot data breaches, hacking, cybersecurity breaking down. That'll be a lot more complicated. Imagine phishing, right?
Yeah.
Like you've seen those
insane.
emails. Now they can just auto-generate a whole lot more of them. So I think we'll see that as well. I think we'll see increased regulation around it, hopefully, which will give us as individuals a lot more protection. And with respect to what we said earlier, like it gives you something back. The AI on the internet tells you, this is the answer to your question, right? Whether it's an image or a video or some text. I think we will need a lot more critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will need to learn, okay, if it's something coming back from the internet, I do need to somehow double check it for accuracy or whatever.
And do you think that will happen, or will have to help? Do you think people will evolve and I need to be more critical, or will become lazy and just believe?
I think critical thinking has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in North America, but also in Europe, I think. So I think we actively have to put it back into education, right? So there's opportunity there for improvement. And I think there's also new opportunities in journalism, right? So those are examples where we need to put an extra effort if we as a society are not going to collectively make us dumber by trusting random internet services.
Yeah. Previously, we were talking about the dust and so I'm seeing we're walking in the desert. There's a lot of dust in there. There's a dust storm basically, but there's some dunes. There's some oasis. Where do you see that happening? What would if I'm in the middle of the storm?
So there's a few trigger words in there like desert. I was thinking of desserts. So I had pies in my mind for a second, and then you mentioned dunes. So the second movie's coming out finally. So the creative destruction is indeed AI landed and the dust is all over us, so we don't know what's happening, which way to go. The dunes, I assume, is a perspective, a hilltop, so you can see a little bit further, maybe beyond parts of the storm. And the oasis is, okay, this is calm here, I can take a breather for a second. For me, a dune would be an example of, look at a tech company, look at big tech, what are they doing? How are they putting those new things in features? Because a lot of the tools and technologies we use today are theirs. So they're just putting it in their features.
They already know what it can bring as value.
So we're going to have a better Word. We're going to have a better Google Docs. We're going to have a better Photoshop, and so on and so forth. So that'll be the new normal for like 99% of the people on Earth. And then the oasis, I would say, when there's dust of creative destruction, for me at least, an oasis is just playing with it yourself. When you cannot cut through all the bullshit and the noise on the internet, just play around with things yourself, and then you'll better understand the ins and outs, and that'll give you like a calmness, right? A piece of quiet, so you can better inform yourself and then judge, okay, what is good and what is bad. Where should I go next? Which dune or oasis should I visit next?
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying experimenting is like the way forward. I think that's true. You need to learn and make up your mind on what's best for you. Now we see a lot of powers at play, a lot of things happening. Even if you're experimenting, I guess it's not that easy to know. Okay, what steps what do I do tomorrow? What do I do today? That's something we often get as a question as well. How do I start? It's so fast, and definitely a lot of companies, they are investing in AI, putting it as a strategic, putting it as strategic, as simple as that, putting a lot of budget into it, developing stuff themselves. But the choice is, they don't know where to start sometimes. And yes, ChatGPT is the obvious choice, or large language models. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I think you should go back to who invented them. LLMs, for example, were invented by Google some time ago, and they didn't put them into practice. Why? Because they were thinking that there were too many risks associated with it. And now the beast is unleashed, if you will. So I think if you really are at a loss, what do I read first? Because social media is full of new stuff that gets obsolete tomorrow. Then I would go back to some of what those inventors have written about it. And then you'll read, a whole ton of use cases probably that are like, you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other, and here are the risks with them.
Yep.
So you don't have to reinvent all of that stuff that was already invented. You could just go there and read it essentially.
Yeah. Okay. And in your experimentation, so you're experimenting today as well, do you have like a fixed process, or is it you give people room, they try out, they come with new ideas, or is there a fixed way of working?
Well, we're a large company, right? We're over 1,000 people today at Collibra. So right now I'm thinking about, okay, how can we make sure that we expose this to a broader set of not just engineers or not just AI engineers, but also maybe some of our professional services people or sales engineers, or maybe even some of our regular data analysts or legal people. So how can you get it in the hands of as many people as possible for experimentation, so you can learn from it as an organization?
Okay, I like that one. That's one. So you're bringing it in the organization. The citizen is coming back. Actually, you're putting it in their hands. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, people are using this stuff now to say, okay, I put in a CSV, and then out comes an analysis complete with charts and graphs and metrics you should be looking at. So everybody could use this, right? So you should give it in the hands of as many people as you can, just to try it out in a controlled fashion.
Yeah, exactly. Is there somewhere where you draw a line? Like we've heard JP Morgan say, not use it. You maybe have heard the Samsung story where apparently some factory secrets got pushed into ChatGPT. Is there a way you deal with that?
Yeah, we have strict controls for that. So, but we've had that from the beginning. So if you create a new data product at Collibra, you do have to, double check with your legal and security colleagues, because you cannot just do a select star on your data warehouse and put that in some random service on the internet. That is a bad idea. Just as it is a bad idea to take the CSV file and put it on a public folder somewhere. So there are certain controls put in place to avoid those things from happening, and they should be in all companies. You shouldn't just upload your databases onto the web, right? And the reason for that is because data breaches are just happening that way, but also you have to think about basic human rights. I mean, privacy, for example, and those are very important to us.
Yeah. So Stijn, you have a bit of a worldly view, let's say. You're now back in Belgium, but you've been in the US for some time. You've traveled the world. How do you see the difference between those regions with regards to AI and what's happening?
I think fundamentally those regions continue to operate as they have before. So in Europe, that means, and I don't want to sound negative, just to be very clear, right? But in Europe, it's more fragmented if you compare it to the US. Yes, I know they have their states and their states have local laws, etc. But it is, one country with one language, if you will. Whereas in Europe, it's a lot more fragmented. So that's one big difference. And then if you go to completely one market, quote unquote, that's Asia with China, for example, which is also a big player in this game. And then there's other behavioral differences. Like in Europe, they tend to, put regulation first and then, protect the citizens. Let's, tame the progress of technology a little bit while investing in it and figuring out how to use it for good, right? Whereas in the US, it's more like, oh, we have a cool new technology. Let's put it out there and see what happens. And we'll do case-based law and get the regulation.
But much more the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm generalizing, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. But based on my observation, I think that the same thing will apply now, right? So they'll try a lot more in the US. They'll put it in their big platforms. We'll use those, and we'll come up probably with some smarter new algorithms, right? We'll come up with pockets in Europe where there is real intelligence. We'll come up maybe with innovations in the area of new algorithms, new architectures, new mathematical stuff maybe, or maybe even, what do you call it again? Quantum computing, right? Or in the area of data privacy. So you'll see different ways of advancing between the US and Europe. But I do think we have to recognize Europe for what we are, right? So regulatory strong, which is good. And probably a lot of our creative people are just going to use the tools that the US provides for us. So we have to, get it in the hands of those creative people. We have to get it in the hands of those younger people so they can play around with it and learn to master the tools of the future. Because like you said earlier, it's not just a tool. You have to do something with it to get to the value point.
And how do you feel about some people say that there is an opportunity for Europe to have their own big tech AI player? How do you feel about that?
I think we do have the opportunity. And I do think there is investment from private capital or public capital to make that happen. I do think the US has a one-up. Like they've typically been the ones who make the global big players. And that's because they have that large unified market, which allows them to generate a bigger innovation machine. So we have the opportunity. We can do it. I think it just takes a little bit more work because of the fragmented, more regulated landscape.
Yeah. So Collibra is already quite a large company. It's a I would say multinational. You're across the world. For such a company dealing with AI, does it have additional challenges, and how do you cope with it? I mean, you have people in Europe, you have people in the US, you have probably people in Asia as well. Is that an extra complexity for you?
Of course it is. I mean, imagine you're 4 people in a garage, you're literally all sitting together. If you come up with an idea, you can probably implement and execute it almost at the same time, right? Whereas if you are with more people and departments and processes and different time zones, things are typically do take a bit more time. But once a bigger machine of a bigger company comes into motion, it can also make a lot more impact and results a lot faster. You just have to get the gears in place, if you will. And I think that's a challenge that all of our customers have been having with AI for at least 10 years. I mean, it isn't enough to have a PhD in physics to come up with a beautiful AI model that is predicting the future accurately or not. What really matters to those large organizations is whether they can take that person, put them in the right place, provide them with all the right data, and then also provide them with the changes in business processes and whatnot to leverage the outcomes of that perfect AI model.
So it's much more than the AI model. It's the It's changing the environment, it's the whole, like what they say, cross-functional teams, and making sure that you really landed in an organization.
Absolutely. I mean, the best comparison to make is imagine the world before the mobile phone, right? Or imagine the world before the personal desk, the personal computer, the PC. You'd have the mainframe. So if you would, in the era of the personal computer, still operate as if it was all a mainframe, you would look very weird, right? Today, if you would imagine that the world is only personal computers and mobile phones don't exist to your business, but you still operate, I mean, you would look very weird. So also with AI, it's the same thing. It's a new technology. It holds a lot of power. You have to change your way of working to that new tool.
Yeah. So, and that's something Collibra is working on, but giving it in the hands of the company basically as well and experimenting that way. That's your first step there.
No, there's a number of there's multiple steps there, but indeed experimentation is a big part of that. And then from that you have learnings, and you can say, okay, we can use it for that. We definitely shouldn't use it over there because that would be a big risk or too much effort, high value, low value, what have you. And then you put it in the roadmaps. But AI is already being used at our company for a while in different pockets and places. I mean, whether it's for predicting sales or, reviewing legal text or what have you.
Let's fast forward a lot. What would you say the next 10, 20 years? You hear a lot of utopian and dystopian talks. Some people talk about this is the end of humanity. The others say this is the beginning of humanity almost. We'll finally be able to do what we want to do. What's yours? And let's start with the dystopian one.
Yeah, you are now in the realm of science fiction. If you try to calculate 10 or 20 years ahead, right? Because you could extrapolate a little bit with hardware,
with that
speeds,
if you want.
etc. But 10 or 20 years from now, then you're in the realm of science fiction. So dystopian, I think one of my favorites there is the Terminator series, right? Which is almost an exact example of the paperclip machine problem, right? If you build an AI that has as its goal to make paperclips, it's just going to consume all the world's resources, discard humanity just to produce paperclips because that is its goal. So I think the Terminator, I'm a fan of the movie series, so that's a good example of dystopian, very clearly. A little bit more subtle, but also AI going haywire, I think is the Aliens example. So, or HAL, even in 2001 A Space Odyssey. So the computers seemed to work perfectly there, but it was still doing things that were wrong and very intransparently understood.
And do you see that possible? Do you see that happening?
I think some of that is already happening today. I mean, not in those drastic examples, but there are already cases where, people get wrong convictions or mortgages denied or erroneous medical procedures on the basis of somebody trusting a computerized system a little bit too much. So that's already happening. Just in, stories that we might not notice individually, we need to see them collectively as a society to understand, okay, this is a big problem. I mean, we have self-driven cars killing people, right? That's happening.
Exactly. True. Do you see a solution? Can we prevent that from happening?
I think we can, yes. First of all, you have to make sure that every one of those systems is a button or a plug, so you can just, if it really goes bad, you can just unplug it or push a button. But in the end, we should never think of these systems as their own humans. I mean, it's not the self-driving car which is killing a person, right? It is the producer of the self-driving car or the person in the car operating the car that is responsible. Either of those are responsible because they built or operated the machine. And whatever machine we build or operate, we need to have safety constraints around it. We need controls around it so that we can actually manage that machine.
Am I hearing you say then that we should actually make the laws in a way that we can't go beyond the copilot idea? Because at the end you always have to have someone being responsible?
I'm saying that when people use a copilot to build whatever system they're building, that system is going to be susceptible to laws and regulations anyway. You can try to, forbid somebody from building a copilot, but they're still going to build it in another country or somewhere else. It's still going to happen. I mean, somebody could build it in a garage. What are you going to do? So I think we should put controls on the end system that goes in the hands of many people. Just like when we take a plane, there's safety precautions. When we eat food, there's safety precautions.
Okay. All right. Let's say that we work that out and we evolve to a utopian future. What would be that for you?
The utopian example, maybe the best one, the best utopian example we can take that is in mainstream, we can take from the Marvel series, right? Where you have Iron Man, DC's version of Batman, if you will. No, the other way around. Marvel's version of Batman, my bad. And essentially he has this computer system called Jarvis, which is his roboticized butler. And throughout the movie series, you actually see it's being super helpful and it's becoming more useful. And it can do more things, but then you also see it go haywire. And then they fix it again. So I think for most people, that would be an utopian example. My utopian example of an AI is just everything is a lot easier and more efficient and done for us without us having to necessarily think about it. I mean, when we take a picture today, there's a lot less things we have to think about than when you took a picture 50 years ago.
Exactly. That's a good example.
Well, I really enjoyed the session. Some interesting questions. It made me think in a few points. If we'd have to summarize it, how would you do that?
So you're challenging me right now.
Yeah.
Fair point. So I think you shared with us that in the beginning, AI is already there for quite some time. Then it came together in some sort of an inflection point where we have compute data, evolving to the dusty period that we're in right now, where there's a lot happening.
The creative destruction.
Exactly. That's a good word to remember. And now we're in a period where we should experiment, figure our way out, and that should hopefully, if we do all our best, evolve into a utopian future where we all have our own Jarvis.
Exactly. I mean, imagine whatever personal device we have 10 or 20 years from now, and it has your own personal Jarvis representing you on the internet or internet sphere, whatever we have then. That would be nice.
Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more, don't hesitate to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for the next episodes of Future Forward, where we'll be unraveling the AI future, one expert at a time.